Hello everyone and welcome. Make a cup of your favorite drink and get comfortable because this is a wonderful time for new stories from Yellow Cat. Send your own stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. People who got fired on the first day of the job. What happened? I wasn't exactly fired on my first day, but the story kinda fits. I graduated a mechanical engineer back in August 2015. My country was, and still is, going through some economic crisis and people were being fired much more than hired. But in December of the same year, I get a call. A company had found my resume and wanted to do an interview. Great. I traveled to be interviewed and maybe 3 or 4 hours later, they call me to tell me I got the job. It wasn't a very good paying one, terrible hours, 2 to 10:30 p.m. in a city close to the one I was living, but still I had to take the subway to get back and it would not be very safe. But beggars can't be choosers. I was happy. They told me I'd start early January and sent me to the medical examination, sent me papers to open a bank account on their chosen bank and get my pay and all that. On January, I was told my would-be boss was on vacation. What? And I'd have to start later on, maybe March 1st. February passes by, and on 28th, they told me there was some trouble they were fixing. On March 3rd, I was told the position I was hired for was no longer available. I was literally fired before my first day. They called me back a few weeks later for an interview for better position, better pay, better hours, and all that. They didn't even answer my emails after that, didn't bother to tell me I wasn't hired again. Very professional company in HR. On January 1st, I was told my would-be boss was on vacation, and I'd have to start later on, maybe March 1st. At this point, it would be worth thinking something is wrong here, I'm obviously being scammed. What difference does it make whether the boss is on vacation or not? The company is made up of only him. Or why let the boss go on vacation when you plan to hire new staff? I would immediately after that would have stopped counting on something because it's clearly not good and then work with people who can only promise a lost cause, man. I started a job as a student mechanic at my university. Paid like crap, $9 an hour, I believe. But it would help pay the bills and buy beer, flexible around my school schedule. I'm a DIY mechanic and have done basically all of my own work on all of my 7 cars, from doing brakes/wheel bearings to replacing an engine. The job wouldn't be anything like that though, described as just basic things. Oil changes, basic inspections, sweep up the shop, go on runs to the parts store if something was needed and couldn't be delivered, go on runs to pick up cars or drop off cars at an off-site shop, body shop usually, didn't do body work on site. Anyway, I'm there starting the job. I'm tasked with power washing the undersides of buses/big vans. The underside of a bus is a gross place, especially in northwestern Ohio. Thick grease, sludge, etc. I'm not complaining though. It's 90 degrees with 110% humidity and sunny outside. I'm sweating my balls off on the ground, covered in grease, power washing the underside of the 3rd bus of the day probably. Hadn't really seen anybody except one guy showing me how to use the power washer and such. Then, near the end of the day, I, drenched in sweat and water and grease, was approached by the manager who said something like, "You know, it seems like you're not really into the world. We really need someone motivated to get stuff done, and I totally get it if you don't want to do it anymore." I was like, the F? I had like 5 minutes in total interaction with other people on my entire shift. I mostly just kept to my own business power washing buses until my shift was over. I was pretty peed because I just did some of the most miserable work imaginable for hours for like $40. Who the F would be enthusiastic about that kind of work? Anyway, I wasn't exactly fired, but I didn't return for the next day. Got a much better job at a help desk for police/court software stuff. Paid better, and I basically sat around the whole time watching YouTube or reading, taking the occasional phone call. I wondered how they imagine a motivated person for a position washing the bottoms of buses. I mean, how are you supposed to do it? Like those girls in the ads for the car wash in a bikini all foamy into happy music while dancing with a washcloth and singing into a water hose? Then yes, the man is full of enthusiasm. And by the way, OP, you should have hugged that dude and told him to F off with a smirk. But I'm glad you got out of there. I was young, naive. I interviewed for an inside sales job, got the job, turned up on the first day ready to get to work. The manager told me the first 2 weeks was unpaid training. I confirmed this was not a joke or a prank played on the new guy. The manager stood by his word. I called him a piece of S for making waste money on work clothes and turning down a real job with another company. I threw a stapler at a computer monitor. It shattered, he fired me. Like I wasn't 3 seconds from quitting. Sorry, mother effers. We'd already negotiated my pay prior to day 1. No mention of 80 hours worth of my free labor. Threw a stapler at the monitor? My respect, they deserved it. But it's a little risky. They could have reported you for property damage, but you're lucky they're stupid a-holes. It amazes me that employees think they can make someone work for free. Didn't get fired, but I always think I should have been. I was an IT apprentice and clocking off time was 5:30. At roughly 5:20, the more experienced IT guy I was with started to watch films and set up his machinery to copy a DVD. Back then, it took all night to break the CSS encryption, so he'd leave it running. As I'm watching this film, a lady walks in and says hi and asks if this is what we should be doing. I explain and say, hey, it's almost home time anyway, no problem. Turns out, the lady is the owner of the business. Oops. Second story where I didn't get fired but could/should have. I'm a bit older, first day at another more important job. I couldn't find a car parking space, but someone had parked in a weird way, blocking off 3 other spaces. I walk in and moaned quite loudly to a friend about some knobhead who had parked their car like that. Turns out, it was a department head, who was stood behind me. Didn't get fired, was there for 10 plus years, but it was mentioned in my leaving speech. Dude, you're a D-lucky guy. To screw up in front of your bosses twice and still have your job, that takes some skill. Or you've had 2 really good bosses. Went to an interview at a clothing store, mostly athletic stuff. Let's call them chair. So I show up to the interview, do the whole thing, let them know I'll be on vacation soon, but am willing to work with them on that. I get a call later saying I'm hired and to come in to sign some stuff, and then I can start my shifts when I return from vacation. Awesome. So I return from vacation, give them a call, and they tell me a time to come in. I show up and they ask where my resume is. I told them I didn't bring one. They scolded me saying always bring a resume to an interview. I was not aware this was an interview since I've already signed forms saying I was hired. I do the whole interview and ask at the end about the forms. The manager who had hired me no longer works there, and apparently that means I no longer work there either. So I get a call to come in for my first real shift. Turns out, it's an interview with another manager. So I'm sitting through this 3rd interview after I've been told twice that I've been hired, and she says that they'll give me a call. After a week, I follow up and am told, like I said before, if we need you, we'll call you. I haven't called you, so we don't need you. Please don't call again. So that's how I got hired and fired 3 times and wasted $60 on parking for the process. That's some weird management approach they have. Why would you even have an interview at all, moreover 3 times, if you don't need this new staff at all? And OP, the phrase will call you is always that you will not be taken. Next time, just tell such people to go F themselves. It's not even worth your attention, let alone time and money. Obligatory, not me, but my friend told me a story. He got a job at this hippie burrito place. The place is vegetarian and vegan friendly, and they make their own tortilla chips and salsa. It's that whole California surfer vibe. Anyway, he goes into work the back kitchen and they are training him. They tell him about the 2 different cooking stations so they can keep vegan tools and not mix them with the meat ones and such. I don't know the joke he made, but it was about vegans being lower on the food chain. That didn't sit well. So then they were going over their meal policy. You can get 1 free meal a shift, but the homemade chips you can just take, doesn't matter. They make 2 kinds of chips, flour and corn, and mix them. This guy picked out most of the flour ones since they were his favorite. They told him not to come back. I think your friend is a bit of an idiot. Why would you joke like that when you're interviewing at a place where vegans and vegetarians are valued customers and they literally have to cook just for them? is really dumb. In the end, the reason for dismissal was stated as prefers flour chips, I think. That would have been funny. This is honestly probably the stupidest thing that's ever happened to me. I got a job offer from a recruiting firm which mostly recruited for government positions. Most of those agencies the company hired for required their employees to be US citizens. What no one told me during the entire interview process, I think I had 3 interviews with them total, is that all of their employees also had to be US citizens. I am a Canadian citizen with permanent residency. Didn't find out till the first day when I was filling out all the new hire paperwork and handed the HR rep my green card as a form of ID. She goes, "Oh," but still doesn't say anything. I go back to my desk for several hours before my new boss calls me into her office to let me know that since I am not a US citizen, they would have to let me go. I asked her if that's the case, why didn't anyone mention it at any point before now? It's not as though I deliberately tried to hide it. It's never been a problem before now, and they didn't ask. All she could do was apologize, but basically the result was that they flat out could not hire me. The worst part? I actually had 2 different job offers on the table and took several days to make my decision, weighing the pros and cons. When I accepted this job, I subsequently turned down the other job. So not only did I lose out on this job due to multiple interviewers' incompetence, I actually lost out on 2. In hindsight, I kinda feel like I dodged a bullet on both, but that's a whole other story. The other job was with an apartment complex leasing office, a company a good friend of mine worked for, so he got me an in. He was working at a different location than I would have been, and the manager at the location I was looking at seemed really cool at first, but a while after I had turned that job down, they ended up working at the same location, and he said she was a complete psycho. So, between a company that's so mismanaged they can't even lay out their job requirements properly in an interview, and a job with a crazy manager, I'd say all in all, I would have rather had neither, and I'm happy with the company I ended up with afterwards. And why can't you work if you're not a US citizen? It seems to me that this is some kind of hidden discrimination. And who is this HR representative? What do you mean, oops? Why not tell them that you're not suitable for us at once? Is it difficult? Why waste a person's time and give them hope? Better yet, as soon as a person sees a vacancy, to indicate that only US citizens are accepted. God, they're such idiots. But, of course, working with a psycho manager is not the best option, so you're really lucky that the first hires were so incompetent. I was working through an employment agency, my second contract out of welding school. However, employment agencies tend to not know S about welding. They call me Friday. Can you be at Door Welds for Monday at 7 a.m.? It's a 2-week contract, $18 an hour. Yes, what type of welding is it? MIG. Okay, great. I get there a half hour early. I was afraid of getting lost, bridges being up, that sort of thing, and sit outside with the other welders and smoke. I go in, do the safety thing, take a tour, and realize this is not MIG welding. I have to wear a respirator. I do not own one. This welding is really past my abilities, but everyone is really nice. This is a production welding job, which means they need someone who can work fast, not screw up, and has experience in all positions and can read complex blueprints with welding symbols. Yay, I got one! So I gear up. I bring my own jacket and gloves because I'm tiny. You always bring your own welding helmet, and I have a million random beanies that keep my hair from catching on fire, and he takes me and runs a few beads. So I run a few, and yeah, they're pretty good. He yells out to a few guys wandering by looking at me, this tiny kinda guy kinda girl with an S load of tattoos. Hey, watch your A's. She picked up a whip and a gun 8 months ago and is better than half of you. Then he says I need a ventilator, and I notice the process is really different. It's not exactly MIG, which is GMAW, gas metal arc welding, which I'm qualified in. It's MCAW, metal core arc welding, which I've never done before, but it's similar. So I get fitted for a respirator, and it's over 100 degrees in the coolest area, and that effing sucks. So I stumble through the day. I'm too short to reach over the doors I'm welding, even if I stand on something, so I have to do it backhand, which isn't easy, the lighting sucks, and I know I'm in the GD dark, but good lighting does help. I'm in every position possible and doing things I've never even attempted before. I'm effed. Then, the respirator keeps coming unsealed, and I'm sweating, and people keep coming by to chat. I'm putting down good welds, but it's just taking so long because I have no experience in this. I get along with everyone, and the tool guy keeps giving me free S. I walked out with a respirator, like it would ever fit anyone else, a couple new lenses for my hood, a grinding mask because it's way easier than setting your hood to grind, and some grinding wheels. Every time I walk by, he hands me something, and when I go to return it when everyone's packing up, he says it's mine. Sweet. So I go to the boss, hand him the key card, he says he'll call the employment agency. I get home half hour later, I get a call from the agency. They love you, you have so much potential, but they were looking for a journey person, someone who has completed an apprenticeship or has so many logged hours, but they'd love to have you if they have a position open for training. They thought you were great, but you couldn't go fast enough. The welds were great, better than others, but you need to do more. So I got paid for the day, and I got about $200 in free S. And in most welding gigs I've had, you get paid breaks, no unpaid lunch. I think they're a-holes for not hiring you as a regular worker, cause you're a real effing hard A. Even with no experience in this welding category, you did great and did it better than anyone else. But basically, you got a big bonus out of this, like 200 free S. I wouldn't call it the best story on the climactic scale, but on the profitability scale, it's the best. Thank you for listening to those stories. If you want to see new videos, be sure to subscribe to the channel and don't forget to hit the like button.